So oftentimes when you join a partnership, you have to buy in. Did you have to do that?
I did. I had to.
Okay.
It took me about 1.5 years to save enough money. I had to buy into 1/3 of the business's worth.
Today I'm joined by Tyra Burgess. Tyra has owned and operated Pulse Holistic Health in Boise, Idaho for the past 11 years. She is an integrative medicine practitioner, has earned the professional designation of Diplomate of Asian Medicine through the NCCA and several other health certifications. Tyra has a biochemistry degree from Northwestern University and a master's from Wellspring School of Asian Healing Arts and a doctorate in clinical integration. Welcome to Beacon for Business, Tyra.
Thank you.
So we talked a little bit about your business. How did you decide to start your business?
The business was started, and it was an extension of the school I went to for my master's degree. And I came home from being a military wife, and we decided to retire back here. And I went back to the practice I had practiced at before. And I worked my way up where I was offered a buy-in to the partnership that already existed.
So what kind of challenges did you deal with?
In the partnership, or as a
Well, in the business as a whole, and becoming a partner.
Becoming a partner was difficult because as much as it sounds like, oh, you're a partner, you're going to do better, you actually kind of lose money. So that was one of the challenges. The second challenge is, they had 2 mines, but then we had 3. So we always had things out with a 2-to-1 split. And at times that was difficult when we're trying to value each other's opinions and integrate all of that. And sometimes that's just not possible. So that was difficult as well. No, sometimes it was also very rewarding what we could come up with as a group, as 3 partners, and as owners. And at other times it was very, very difficult. Yeah.
So oftentimes when you join a partnership, you have to buy in. Did you have to do that?
I did. I had to. It took me about 1.5 years to save enough money. I had to buy into 1/3 of the business's worth.
And they somehow came up with the value of the business?
Yeah, they would take it on a yearly average of what that was and divide it into and before it was 50/50. So then they started dividing the number by 3.
So some other challenges surfaced. Can you talk a little bit about that?
After several years of being there, we found that one of the partners was embezzling some money. And so we had to navigate that with and without that partner, meaning law enforcement had to be involved, yet we needed to make sure our clientele had no idea what was going on, and also keep things peaceful as much as we could between the interdynamics of the partnership. However, she was legally removed from the partnership at that point in time. And then it was the decision of what do we do from here? And we had a few more challenges within the next 6 months with our building having asbestos, who's going to pay her third, things like that. And it ended up that the final decision was made between me and the last, when it was just 50/50, that I would take over the entire business as a sole proprietor at that point.
Did you have to buy out the remaining partner at that point?
I did. And the reason that was made is I was the practitioner in a position to be able to do so.
Usually, a lot of times you have to find funding to start a business or to buy into a partnership. It sounds like you self-funded. You basically took your savings and made that work.
Within our company structure, we have holding accounts in case things go wrong. And I took the money that I had kept in my holding account and applied that to that's how I paid everybody out.
When you realized that there was some fraud going on, how was that partner able to pull that off? How did she take money out of the partnership?
So we have QuickBooks, like most small businesses, I feel. And she was invoicing her clients through the company books as she was supposed to. And then she convinced our office manager to take our PayPal account and put it directly to her bank account, which with PayPal, once you change it, changing it back is very, very, very difficult. And we didn't know. So she was in her own treatment room running a card through a Square for PayPal and then coming back at night and deleting the invoices off of QuickBooks. So she was just taking what should have gone into the business, because our structure was we all paid everything into the business. And then at that point, our bookkeeper would pay all of the bills. And then we all got paid out what we had remaining from what we had contributed financially. And so she also was watching the books, because we have full access as owners to watch all of the different reports in the back. And she would see right when the last week was up and all of her dues for the month were due. And then she would transfer money over. And so I actually caught her when I had gotten in between her and then watching her make an invoice, go treat. And then I walked up behind her while she was deleting the invoice. And then we checked her PayPal account and it had been changed. And we had to then call the police. And we had a detective that was in our office. We asked him to come in plain clothing. And he spent 3 days going through all of our books.
But that was fun.
It was stressful.
Yes. So from an accounting standpoint, I see red flags at every turn here.
Yes.
The controls obviously weren't there, and too much access to the financial system, most likely. And so you didn't have an accountant who was fully in charge of the finances. The partners could get in and do what they felt they needed to do as well, sounds like.
We had a bookkeeper, but the partners were in charge. We have guidelines within our partnership saying we can't have, at the time, that partnership, that we could not have our business banking on our phones. And that is one of the ways this partner also had gone about doing things wrong, is we didn't know. We had no way of knowing that she had our bank account on her phone. So she was also transferring money out of each of our holding accounts, until the bookkeeper, who came once a week, would say, you had a drastic drop in your holding account. And then she would explain it away. We'd have these big, long meetings. She'd pay it back. And it just got to a point that when the PayPal situation happened, we were done trying to be kind. We were done trying to have meetings. We were done being paid back for her dishonesty and trying to give her the benefit of a doubt of being a partner and work with it. And through that, it just became something that she had stolen from each of us personally. She had broken the guidelines of our partnership legally. And then she had literally legally embezzled money. And there was just no other option other than to ask her to leave.
That's one of the challenges, one of the stresses of small businesses that I've seen, where you've got an owner, an entrepreneur that started the company and owns the company. And then when you come in as an accountant, they don't understand that even though you work for them and you report to them and you get paid by them, you have to be somewhat independent and make sure that everything is done properly and that there's no nefarious transactions. In this case, you had 3 partners. And so you had 3 people who, could have possibly done the same types of things, for the lack of a better word, by bullying the bookkeeper. Is that kind of how you see it? That she kind of bullied the bookkeeper into allowing her to?
She bullied the office manager into a lot of these things. The office manager had prior been her student, and she chose who the office manager was. So the bookkeeper was doing her job and sending out the red flags. This is happening. This is happening. Hence, then we were starting just to have endless meetings every Monday morning about what the bookkeeper had reported to all of us at one time. And she would have to be accountable at that point, because there was just there's facts in front of us, not hearsay. And so we also had to let the office manager go. That was the relationship that was allowing this behavior. And we would put in a new guideline. For example, it was our partners cannot write themselves a check anymore. You have to let the bookkeeper do it. And I went in with my patient. Another partner went in with his patient. Our 6 other providers that rented from us went in, and she literally got up from the meeting and went and wrote herself a check to cash and went to the bank. So for about 6 months, it was like chasing a child is how it felt, to catch her in any way that we could, because every time we turned around, we put the guidelines in, we followed the policies, she would just go around it.
Was this the partner or the office manager?
The partner, but she was using office manager as her means to do some of these things without us catching her right out the gate. We usually had a 7-day window before we would catch her again, and then another 7-day window, and that went on for months.
I'm sorry you had to go through that. That sounds very painful, very expensive.
It was expensive, and she had also been one of my teachers, so it made it a very interdynamic, difficult situation for everybody.
The lessons to be learned here from a business and financial standpoint is you have to have controls in place where not everyone has access to the banking account. Not everyone has access to your accounting software, and everything should be documented with receipts and some type of paper document so that you have a paper trail to determine what actually happened. That happens a lot, especially it happens a lot now that the paper is not seen as important with the technology we have now. And you've got company credit cards where all you do is go back into the website of the credit card and download whatever the credit card says you had, but that doesn't quite take the place of the original documentation.
Correct. Our implementation now is nobody has the passkey to QuickBooks except for now we have a controller versus a bookkeeper. I have never had the bank account on my phone, and I sole own it now. I can find the checkbook if I needed it. I'm allowed to write a check, but I don't pay any of the bills either. I do nothing with money. She hands me a paycheck, which is fine with me. And there's a paper trail from everything, meaning from writing how I'm paid, she writes a physical check. We have to provide a receipt even if we buy ink it has to be not a picture. We have to give the actual physical piece of paper, or we pay for it personally. I pay for it. If I cannot produce the receipt if I use the bank card, and I'm the only one allowed to use it, and it's now locked in the till and not allowed to leave the building. So we added a lot of more policies of security to make sure that there's no access to the money except for from the controller, so that if that situation ever happens again, we very quickly know what's going on, who did it, and how to be done with it.
It sounds like you got a good controller. So, so when you created the new business when the partnership broke up and it became your business owned solely by you, did you make other changes as far as staffing obviously you brought in a controller, which was a very good move.
I did. I decided that the other partner, 50-50 relationships, sometimes I feel can be more difficult, at least for me. I asked the other gentleman, his option was, you can go and do your own business as well. I can buy you out and you can rent from me, which he still does. So that was a big change. The next big change we made was how many providers rent from us. And then the third was our location, as my bandwidth is not the same as 3 people's bandwidth to watch 8 to 10 people who rent from us. So I had to be realistic about what I was capable of. And I went to Chinese medicine school. I didn't go to business school. So that also really had to be kept in mind as I became partly in charge of operations all the time. So it had to be within my grasp of my abilities.
And you've just hit on one of the main stresses of owning your own business is you can't be the expert in every aspect of the business. You're a subject matter expert. You have the ability to help people physically and emotionally, but that doesn't necessarily. There should not be an expectation that you would be a finance expert or operations.
So we hired a different office manager who's very good at managing the people, including me. That's part of the interview is I need you to manage me. If I have to manage you, we're going to have to let you go because that's what I need. I just want to do Chinese medicine. I don't want to do the dynamics of human resources, dealing with employees and, when you have to discipline them, none of that. I just want to do my job and own the business. There's still a part where I do have to do operational things. However, that again has now been refined to once a week. I get to just meet with the controller, and that is the time set aside for me to step into the operations side of things, is the practitioner side of things. So I feel like we've also delineated my role and the times that I'm stepping into that role to make it less messy.
If I were to give you advice, that's what I would have told you to do.
You
So
might have done so.
the way everything's working now, you feel comfortable, and you think that you've got things set up now to move forward and not lose sleep over some of the things you've gone through when it was a partnership.
Yes, this happened November before COVID started. At the same time, the building had asbestos, we found out. So not only did I become the sole owner, I had to move the whole practice. And so that's been since, I think it's been 5-6 years. We have had a smooth running ever since. There's normal business hiccups, but there hasn't been a giant problem. So I sleep great. It runs easy. It runs smooth. We don't have to revisit the 49-page guideline book every Monday. That's I think as good as it gets when you own a business.
And you've got the right people in the right place, which makes that all that possible.
That's the only way it's possible. And to trust them.
One of the things that you are getting ready to do, and it's a large endeavor, definitely dwarfs what you have right now for a business. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. I have had a dream since I lived in Asia, and the potential of it happening in Idaho is high because of our natural resources here in Idaho. And so I am currently I think I'm 70% through starting a whole new industry within Idaho as a woman-owned business. And that has been one of the most giant undertakings I've ever done because I, again, do not have a business degree. And so it's one thing to start another business. It's a totally different situation to start an industry because it requires you to learn on the spot things that, again, you have no formal education in or understanding of. And then on top of that, you have to be able to perform well so that when you're asking for funding, when you're negotiating for your lease, for the certain aspects of this industry that need to be put into place, including working with the city, it's a whole new level and a lot of fast learning and being on my toes and having to be in a lot of places at once in one day.
So you've had to find a building separate from where you're at now because the building you have now will not accommodate. So Tyra is using the local hot water, geothermal water, to expand her business dramatically. And as you said, it's really a different business. It's complementary, I guess I would say.
It's somewhat complementary. It's going to be definitely run as a totally separate business in two different locations. One is medicine-based. It's like a medical practice, which is the current business I own. The next is more of a geothermal spa that caters to the affluent versus me catering to those who have medical needs. So very different demographics.
We're talking about a building lease that has access to the geothermal water, which those are two tough things to have come together, and convincing the owners of that building that it's going to be a real business, and that it's going to be a for-profit business, and that you'll be able to make payment.
I'll be able to pay my bills.
You'll be able to pay the rent every week or every month. And so then you have to go through the city and maybe the county, probably the city, to get all the proper permits to do this, correct?
And to learn what that is. And on top of that, I had to become very familiar with the Geothermal Waterworks Board for the state of Idaho, as well as the EPA when it was in action, I guess is the word we would use for now. And on top of that, water analytical companies. Those all were just the beginning, the foundation to even see if this could go. And finding the building was the hardest part. The water rights was the second hardest part. And then the city, they also are creating this industry with me. So what kind of permit? We had to figure that out through literally going through a book, which I thought was so odd. I've had a lot of help from the city to do this, and from Idaho's Geothermal Waterworks. I know most of their employees now, including the water master. We also had to find out, is there enough water to pull for these amount of gallons in a bathtub? Is there enough water we can... It's just been a lot of things of me learning. Like, I just wanted to open this business. Oh, now we're doing all these things. Now I'm down at City Hall a couple times a week. The inspections, this needs to be 2 inches from here. This needs to look like this. You have to have these legal paperworks, engaging a lawyer in a whole different direction for liability than a medical liability way. This is literally slip, fall, overheat, heart attack liabilities. And then insurance. That's also been a different level. Carrying insurance for a medical practice is pretty cut and dry. It is not when your industry does not exist in your state.
And your business and the building that you're using was used for something completely different. So it has to be remodeled, replumbed.
We have to rip out the floor, dig down 18 inches, trench into the pipes that have the geothermal, and then drag it to the right drain, and have all of the tubs go to that drain. So, and on top of that, we have to have the right mechanical engineer architecture drawn for the heat and the water moisture to balance that all out within the building without destroying the building, and then put the floor back in, and then design and decorate from there.
Yeah, I would imagine there would be a fair amount of humidity inside that building when you've got bathtubs full of hot water.
With no ceilings. So yes, it's hot. And it was originally a garden center. So that is one of the perks of picking it, is we can open vents up high and let the air out or in. But it's a lot to learn. Also, I don't know how any of that works. So it's relying pretty hard on a general contractor and finding one that it knows how to. I had to find the only plumber in all of Idaho allowed to do geothermal, put in geopiping. And then on top of that, it includes saunas, 4. So that's a totally different ball game when you're building those out, and how those codes that need to be met. And it's relying on a general contractor quite a bit to know more than you do.
So we've talked a bit in the past few months about you've gone to a bank and you're trying to get an SBA loan, Small Business Administration loan. What kind of challenges do you have there, where this has kind of been a moving object and the costs have probably moved along with everything else, and the business plan, the business model has shifted a little bit too. So what have you done to get funding for this?
I reached out to several. I reached out to the bank that my current company uses and asked what their ideas were. I have, we use Give Me Some Butter, which is a platform to reach out to investors into your business for startups. And lastly, I went to, like I said, several banks, and I chose Zions Bank because of the interest rate they're offering for this year if you fund an SBA loan. And because they offered me the access to the VP of the bank and to a business consultant as our business model and our business plan, because we're creating an industry, had to be so specific for underwriting. And underwriting's been and is really intense because they want it very optimized because it's a new industry.
And they don't want to get involved. They don't want to fund something that's not going to make it. They don't want to be talking to you in 2 to 5 years, 10 years that, well, this was a good idea, but it just didn't work. So they want to have some assurances.
As do people who I'm doing this in their building, because they just had a company that was 3 decades old go under. So they are really wanting to make sure they have the right amount of startup capital to be able to pay for things for a bit till things get going. So does underwriting. And like I said, a lot of itemized things where normally like projections. I can tell you, sir, that is the most crazy concept to a Chinese medicine practitioner's brain. You want me to make up imaginary numbers, hope they're right, and that they're good enough to make my company stay funded? And that has been like a 2-week stall in Tyra's brain of, no, we need to do this itemized. The build out will be itemized. And they're saying, no, we just need to throw in some numbers. What's your guess? Well, I don't know.
So it's called pro forma financial statements. And basically, it's your best guess as to how things are going to go. And sometimes when I'm doing something like that, I'll say, this is the best case scenario, this is the worst case scenario, and this is somewhere in between, and then make a decision on what to present to the bank.
I turned that over to the controller. I said, this feels like the Disneyland of making up numbers, like it's all imaginary, and my brain doesn't work this way, and it's causing us time. And I just said to my controller, I need you to just take this over. She's very similar to you, Brett, where here's the absolute worst, here's the greatest. And one of our projections, they saw us at a 9% profit. We came up with 80 because the coding was wrong. Well, okay, the answer to that from the VP of the bank is you'll just be an overperformer, but we have to get you to fake the numbers to be closer to what underwriting wants to see, even though they're not accurate.
Yeah, they're wanting to have a positive but realistic pro forma financial statements for the underwriters to go with. If it's too good to be true, then they're going to say, well, it's too good to be true, and so this is pure fantasy. Or they would have, if you would have come back with break even or a loss, they would have probably had similar conversation with you. It's either if this is real, it's not something that's going to fly, and it's not something we can help you with, but maybe you ought to tweak this or tweak that to come up with. They're trying to come up with yes, it sounds like, which is a good thing.
A fast yes, because of underwriting. We're on a time crunch for that percentage through the SBA loan, which is the reason I chose this bank. And so we're on a time crunch, and they just want it to go through underwriting very fast and have everything pre-answered, which is what the business coach's job is. And on top of it, we have the VP who used to be an underwriter helping us. So, we went from an 80% base and them saying 90% to we got it close enough to 22% where the VP said, I'll go to bat for this and explain to them how this does make sense, even though it's different than what we think from, I think it's called a DNCIS code.
So obviously your business model is going to change dramatically from where you are today. And you're going to keep the two businesses separate? No. Okay. So you're not going to move your current Asian Body Works into the same building?
Not the same building. To save my sanity, I think I might rent out a smaller business office in the same complex So all I have to do is run across a parking lot. One of the things that the bank and the building owners wanted was that I work for the first year at this business. I wasn't planning to. And it was told to me that I would be doing that because I needed to learn my own industry. Plus, what made the other business in that space fail was that their owner never showed up and didn't know what was happening. And so that wasn't tracking anything. And so that was one of the contingencies that made them feel as though I was a safe bet to take on this new industry, is that I would be present to run it. So I plan to run across the parking lot if it works out in my best favor.
So is there anything else you can say about the funding process? I know I was actually in my doctor's office on Friday, just a regular checkup, and talking about, somehow in the conversation I mentioned this podcast, and he started asking me questions, which told me that he was contemplating opening a business. And the only thing he asked was, how do I find funding?
Finding funding was where I spent the most amount of time personally researching and different avenues, because there's many, many avenues. You can be angel funded. You can be privately funded. You can be privately funded by yourself or relatives. You can take out a gigantic business loan. You can go through the SBA. There's a ton of options, and it's about finding the options that work best for you and what you're after in the end. So for me, and the way I work, I don't want to be paying 6 different people a month, because that's what I'm obligated to do. So that is why we chose to go with an SBA loan versus several investors. The investors that we will have will be angel investors, meaning there's no return on their investment. They use it as a tax write-off. Give Me Some Butter is all donations for startups and other companies that fund or use grants to help startups. So we try avenues.
Is that an organization that you just look up on the internet and find it, or?
Yes. And like schools use it for giant fundraisers. I found it from my son's school. They raised $500,000 in one dinner using it.
Those are nice things to know that they're out there.
It was a lot of research into what are your resources that don't cost you $1 billion. So you're not paying out this percentage to these investors. You're paying your SBA loan. You're paying, back your TIs potentially. Then that was too much for me to feel secure and even moving forward in this industry. I just want to pay my bill, want to pay my rent, pay my loan, pay my rent, and have that all wrapped up together, so that it also makes the controller's life a lot easier.
And not have 6 different investors showing up at any time, just seeing how things are going.
Wanting to have meetings to tell me how to run my own business as my own personality type, I don't do well with that. And after being in a partnership with 3 people, that sounds like a nightmare to me.
Some of the people that do that are pretty savvy business people, and sometimes they can actually bring a lot of value to the table, and then sometimes not.
And for me, it's finding the right one while keeping what we're talking about a total secret, because in Boise, you and I have discussed this during our consultations together. I have to keep this a total secret. So I also have to be very careful who I even pitch this to. And it would have to be a very niche investor, I found. And that got very difficult. And I just was running out of time. I think it would have been wonderful if somebody who understood this at all could have come forward and said, hey, I'll invest this much. And, we'll figure that out. However, there just wasn't time to even find those people. But I know they're out there, and I think it would have been really lovely, honestly.
Well, and so you're on track to get an SBA loan through Zion's Bank. And that doesn't mean that you wouldn't go the other direction at some point to expand or to to finish something off, as long as the debt isn't too great for the value and for the projected income from the business. So it's not too late.
No, not too late at all. Just me personally finding somebody, making a pitch, hoping they take it. That is what I don't have the bandwidth for to do. But if somebody stepped forward to do so, I would very much be thankful and entertain that.
And once you have a business open, once you've got that building transformed into hot water and bathtubs from where it has been, and it's open and it's functioning, then it's an easier pitch to make at that point, because it's not just your idea on a piece of paper.
That it's functioning, it's doable, it's functioning. At that point, it's much easier to produce numbers. Like, we go back to projections, imaginary numbers. They don't have to deal with imaginary numbers. They have your numbers. They can look and see how things are going, how cash flow is moving.
Back to your imaginary number, in defense a little bit. That's what budgeting is. That's what forecasting is. It's what you hope to do, or what you think you'll do for the next quarter or year or 5 years. If it's long range strategic planning, it's the plans. It's not the actuals. And so hopefully at some point, what's planned out will come true.
Within those numbers, I think the most important aspect for us was pricing structure to get to the end of those in a brand new industry. It's very hard. Normally, if you open a new business, you look up your competitors, you get a kind of an idea of what they're doing, you try to make it your own way a little bit, and you kind of get a free format as to how to set that up. We didn't have that. So I had to create pricing structure as well. And that's anything from when you just walk in the door versus if you're a member, and so several different pricing structures. And then secondary was lines of income, right? That could come more than just the bathtubs. So like outside events, people that want to rent the salt sauna to do a yoga class. If you want to have a bridal party there, all of these different lines of revenue and pricing structures to get expected numbers is very difficult if you don't have I had to do a lot of demographic research alone. There was no company that had it done that you could just pay for it. There was nothing to look up. I just had to start doing all of it by myself, and I would spend hours every night doing all of the demographic research for tourism. And then outside contracts or outside partnerships, like we created one with a very well-known boutique hotel downtown, so that it's all these streams of revenue you can bring in, and how you're going to price that. And at the same time, how are you going to make that flow within the business so that it's always available, and what it looks like, because all of that has to be done before you can open.
In this day and age, it's not that hard to go on the internet and do a query on a certain business or a certain product and get enough data. I've done that several times. Get enough data to get an idea whether your price points were reasonable or you're being competitive. In this case, you have nothing to compare it to in this geographic area. You'd have to go to Seattle, or possibly, I know that there's these facilities in Seattle. I'm assuming there would be in some of the bigger cities, Portland.
We went off of, I had to do it 2 different ways for the bank. I had to do within the state. So that's one in Hagerman, which is nothing like the facility we're opening. There's one in Idaho City, nothing like the facility we're opening. Then I did do Seattle, San Francisco, and Portland as outside, but even those don't look like what I'm doing. So it was close enough to show the bank, like, look, these are successful in other places. Boise is big enough now to sustain this. But yes, a lot of just, here's as close as we get, because you have to have those for underwriting. But yes, a lot of guessing. a lot of, I think, okay, if that's where they're at, then this is where I think we should be at. And uh, I'm not very tech savvy, as you know, Brett. However, AI was incredibly helpful to scan the entire internet to get a price structure, to kind of like we were talking about. You go to your competitor's website, you get a general clue. AI scans for you, gives you a clue, and then it's like, okay, is this feasible in the state of Idaho? Is this feasible within the demographic? And in my demographic research, I also had to even look up the most affluent neighborhoods to make sure that my location was close enough to the affluence within Boise.
Anything else that you expected or maybe didn't expect when you started talking to the bank?
I did not expect how much time. I did not expect. I didn't know how much was going to have to go into it for underwriting. And I don't know where I would have learned that or known that for creating an industry. Like if you Google it, because I did one night when I was feeling very stupid and exhausted, and there just isn't. So you just have to roll with the bank, and you can't really push a bank very fast. I move fast. I push hard and I move fast, and I have to work at their pace under their rules and their guidelines that I don't understand. So that was the hardest part, is the timeline, and everybody that needs to do the build outs is asking, what's the timeline? What's the timeline? And that's all up to the bank. Once it gets to underwrite, also a different timeline that I have no control over.
To clarify, an SBA loan, you go to a local bank, and you don't go straight to the Small Business Administration. You go to a local bank that provides SBA loans. The bank, I believe, does, their underwriters underwrite this based on SBA guidelines, and then they determine whether you're qualified for it.
Also, doing that through a bank, which is the only way to do it, you have to shop around because they all have different percentage interest rates that vary from 20%. Like right now, the reason that we're pushing so hard is ours is 7. We want to keep that 7% interest. I don't want to pay 20% interest on an SBA loan.
And a lot of the interest rates are based on risk and what they perceive as the risk of whatever they're financing. So anybody who's purchased a home and had to get financing for the home understands that it's tedious and it's a lot of work and it's frustrating and nerve-wracking to go through some of these underwriting processes to finance a home. That's not any different than this, only this is much more complicated because it's not a building. When you finance a home, it's, well, we'll check your credit. What's your credit history? We'll check your income.
They'll check your debt to income ratio.
Exactly. It becomes debt to income. Well, everything's debt to income in banks and credit unions, but this is a bigger deal than a house, in most houses anyway.
It's, my house was, and much more stressful and much more, I have to be very involved. I meet with the bank twice a week.
And the other thing I was going to say is it's very important to find a banker, either a branch manager or a relationship manager within the bank that you feel comfortable with and you feel like you can work with, and that they're going to buy into the whole idea, because they can't dictate to the underwriters what they're going to find and what decisions they're going to make, but if they have the right attitude when they're speaking to the underwriters and speaking to the bank management, that goes a long ways.
I feel incredibly lucky. The person that's my cheerleader, as I would call her, is the VP of the bank. And she has been all along, every meeting, this woman is encouraging, here are resources, here are other women-owned businesses, here are think tanks, here. She's always very positively, we truly believe in what you're doing. I will, at the end of this process, I will be the one personally as the VP going to bat for you with underwriting, explaining all of this. And she's very transparent. But that is, I think, the biggest thing that I appreciate about this process and who I picked was who I have in my corner. I have a business coach who helped write the very extensive business plan, but the VP being there twice a week with you of a very large bank saying, I got you. Let's do this. I believe in you. I'm going to, when we get these numbers right, I will be the one. Yes, I'm comfortable with that. I can defend that. I can explain that. And she used to own her own company. Before that, she was a teacher. So she's very well rounded as a human to me and very approachable for the position she sits in. And I don't know how I got so lucky, but I don't know that this project could have been completed without a few people like that. As we started underwriting, I literally said, I have a really cool idea, but if I had to do this by myself, this business would not be happening.
Well, and it sounds like she's invested in this thing as almost as much as you are. She wants to see it happen.
Yes, and it's believable, and that's a really big deal because I've never felt that before.
That's huge. I can't overstate how important it is to have a relationship with a bank or banker that they want to get to yes. They see the value. They see that this is a good thing. If they go in skeptical, the chances of getting this thing through becomes a lot more remote, but it doesn't sound like she's skeptical.
No, she's very, she knows our market well. And she's very good at being direct. Like, that's not going to fly. Like, for example, Tyra, you cannot use the word soak. Why not? I don't want to talk about why I can't on here, but there's a very good reason why. Little things like that. That's probably not going to work. Have you thought about this instead? She's just really invaluable. And then again, like I said, having somebody at her level truly believe in you makes you think this really is possible. Or she would tell me it's not. Because she does. There's things I say where she's just like, that's not going to fly. You got to figure something else out. Or don't do that. Or, no, this really needs to say X, Y, and Z worded this way. Things like that.
So that's great information about funding. And you've fought the war and you're starting to see the light on the other side. Back to the business itself, what kind of business model, what kind of infrastructure, what kind of staffing are you going to need for this new business?
Perk of this business is that we need low staff. So we need to hire 5 people that we put at part-time to make the hours that we're open work, hence the part-time. So 5 people plus me and the controller. So the controller and I will also be playing the role of manager for a year. And as per everybody's request, and I think it'll help me learn the industry I created better. So that's what we need for that. We chose to pay people a living wage, like a livable wage. We're right on the line, but we're way above minimum wage for Idaho. That's one of the big perks we have going for us is we don't have to hire a lot of people for this to go and run. It kind of does it itself. The water's free, which is the biggest selling point. And so it has some nice built-in perks once we got it going.
Is there anything else you can think of that we haven't discussed as far as the existing business or this new venture?
Marketing. When you own a small business, marketing is the second most important aspect of keeping your business going. So I gave an example of the business located in the same position, similar locations where I'm going. And they had this awesome marketing campaign for only 12 months. And they were doing amazing for 12 months. And when that marketing stopped, they lost all their business within 2 weeks. So creating a marketing campaign that is 24 months long, that you submit to underwriting month by month by month by month, what you will be doing is great I feel for myself to keep myself organized and ahead of the game. And we also had to incorporate pre-marketing. The buildup is the biggest draw to this new industry is, ooh, what is it? What is it going to be? Playing with psychology a little bit. Um, and then also marketing, including the psychology of, I want what I think I can't have. Meaning, oh, they might be booked. Oh, shoot, they're going to be sold out. And wording everything in your marketing from your brochures to to all the social media platforms as affluent and almost out of reach. Hurry, hurry, hurry. And the marketing campaigns is a really big deal. If you want to be successful and be profitable, they say, I've been told over and over and over, if you are not profitable in 2 years, you're not going to be. And so setting a goal of how are we going to get profitable before 2 years?
That's important. And to this day and age with the internet and social media, it's vital to be on those platforms because that's where a lot of people get their information. And that's where, I mean, if you're not, there may be some industries that it's less important, but if you're not on social media, promoting yourself or promoting the business, then someone else is going to step in and fill that void and give you give the public an alternative from what you're offering.
Correct. So like, for example, with my medical business, I don't have to do a lot of marketing. Every day we post something on 3 platforms of social media, but it's not like come in and see us. It's just Chinese medicine information for our patients because it's all word of mouth. If you're a good practitioner, people do it for you, the marketing, versus this new industry is not. We need to be very present. We need multiple posts a day, videos, whole different level than just here's the lung channel. We posted it for a day on Facebook I learned that there was more social media platforms than I even knew about. It kind of made me feel old. And going through, how are we going to hit every single one of these? Who's in charge of that? How do we stay on top of it? This is like the second most important part of keeping this business going. Who's going to take on that responsibility and accountability that we can trust to actually do what they say and say what they do, and creating the content for it.
That's good information, and it's vital. You could have the best business in the world, best products or the best services, but if nobody knows about you, nobody understands the value that you bring, you're not gonna get the business.
Nah, and not with a sign. Like when I was young, it was a street sign because we didn't have social media, right? So a sign isn't even going to do it.
Well, now that storefront sign is your webpage. I really appreciate your time today, Tyra. This was a huge for me to have you on as a guest, and I hope everyone, kind of checks in with the progress, and within a couple of years, we'll be the people that can say, well, we used to know her.
You'll still know me. I
Yeah.
appreciate you letting me come. You know how much I wanted to do this with you. I have
All right.
appreciated using your services. So thank you very much for being the business consultant behind this project and wanting to talk to a woman in business. Brett gave me the beginnings of steps to take, where to go, and how to start this project. I don't know if you remember Brett, but that was over 1.5 years ago originally. There's been several times when I haven't really known what in the world, like, I don't know what this is, or he will sit down with me in a way that doesn't make me feel stupid and like I don't have an accounting or business degree, and explain in layman's terms to me what I need to do and which avenues, and he gives me multiple options, which I also appreciate. And he speaks to you as if he is your good friend, when really he's giving you invaluable business advice. And because he's been in business so long, he speaks easily about it. So you just feel very casual and comfortable, and you walk away and you look at your notes. And for me, it was 3.5 pages. And it was like, okay, this was really, really helpful, because when I was originally said, you might need to get a business consultant, I was like, I don't even know what I'm doing. What are they going to counsel me in? he gave me a lot of structure and I cannot emphasize enough the approachability, his kindness, and the way he speaks. He's very, very, very knowledgeable, but because he's so knowledgeable, he speaks like he's just talking about walking the dog. And it makes it very easy to comprehend and to implement the advice he's given you. So I think his services are invaluable. I would recommend Brett to anybody. I have recommended Brett to 2 other people that are my age who are women who are wanting to start businesses. And I recommend Brett because he works well with women. He supports women-owned businesses, and his approachability and his kindness.
I'm going to have to go out and buy bigger hats.
You already have a big head. You're fine.
If anyone watching this is interested in connecting with Tyra and learning more about her business, what's the best way for them to find that information and to connect with you?
My current business, you can connect with me through pulseholistichealth.com. There's a link directly to me. There's also a booking button. If you want to just come in and see me, it gives us our phone number if you want to call into the clinic.
So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great day.
You too. I'll talk to you soon, sir.